Lena knew she was in deep trouble. The man she had once trusted, the brother of her late husband, had turned out to be someone completely different from what he seemed. Every time she looked at him now, all she could see was a shadow of danger, lurking behind his calm smile. She couldn't shake off the fear that gripped her whenever he came close. But Lena wasn't about to give up. If anything, this only made her more determined to uncover the truth and protect herself and her daughter. She decided to take matters into her own hands, but knew she needed help. That's when she reached out to Greg, an old friend of her husband's, who worked as a private investigator. Greg had always been loyal to her husband, and Lena trusted him completely. When she showed him the evidence she had gathered, the insurance papers, the surveillance footage, and the witness statements, Greg agreed to dig deeper without hesitation. He promised to keep everything confidential because he understood how risky it was for Lena to go against such a cunning person. While waiting for Greg to gather more information, Lena played along carefully. She acted as if nothing was wrong, pretending to rely on her brother-in-law for support. Inside, though, her mind was racing with questions. Was he really capable of killing his own brother? Could jealousy have driven him to do something so terrible? These thoughts haunted her day and night, making it hard to sleep or think clearly. One evening, after putting Emily to bed, Lena found herself sitting alone in the living room. Her heart pounded as she heard footsteps approaching. It was him. He had come over uninvited again, just like he often did these days. He walked in casually, carrying a bag of groceries and acting like the perfect helper. But Lena saw right through his act. She forced a smile and thanked him for the food, even though every fiber of her being wanted to scream at him to leave. As they sat together in awkward silence, Lena decided to test him. "You've been so kind to us," she said softly, watching his reaction closely. "I don't know what I'd do without your help." He smiled, but there was something cold in his eyes. "You'll never have to find out," he replied smoothly. "I'm here for you no matter what." His words sent chills down her spine. She nodded slowly, trying not to let her emotions show, but inside she felt sick. How could someone sound so caring while hiding such darkness? Over the next few days, Lena continued to gather clues. With Greg's help, she secretly recorded their conversations. She would casually bring up topics related to her husband's death, hoping to catch him off guard. At first, he dodged her questions skillfully, brushing them aside with vague answers. But one night, things took a turn. They were alone in the house, and Lena brought up the accident again. This time, she didn't hold back. "Do you remember that night?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "The night my husband died?" He froze for a split second before replying. "Of course I remember," he said, his tone clipped. "It was tragic. But strange things keep happening," Lena pressed on, her pulse quickening. "Like, why were you seen near the intersection where the crash happened? And why does the insurance policy list you as the beneficiary?" For a moment, he just stared at her, his jaw tightening. Then, suddenly, his calm facade cracked. His face twisted into a scowl, and he grabbed her wrist tightly. "How dare you accuse me?" he hissed, his voice low and menacing. "After everything I've done for you." Lena winced in pain, but refused to look away. Her voice shook, but remained firm. "Let go of me," she said. "You're hurting me." Slowly, he released her wrist, glaring at her with pure hatred in his eyes. "You think you're smarter than me?" he spat. "But you'll regret this. Mark my words." That was the final straw. Lena realized she couldn't handle this situation alone anymore. As soon as he stormed out of the house, she called Greg and told him everything. Together, they decided it was time to involve the police. Lena handed over all the evidence they had collected, the recordings, the documents, and the surveillance footage. The authorities listened intently and wasted no time launching an investigation. When the police arrived at the house to question him, Lena watched from a distance, her heart pounding. She saw him pacing back and forth, muttering angrily under his breath. When the officers confronted him, he denied everything, claiming he had nothing to do with the accident. but the evidence spoke louder than his lies. In the end, he was arrested and taken away in handcuffs. Before leaving, he turned to Lena with a chilling glare. "This isn't over," he warned. "You'll pay for this." Though his words sent shivers down her spine, Lena stood her ground. She had done what she had to do, not just for herself but for her daughter. For the first time in weeks, she felt a glimmer of hope. The nightmare wasn't entirely over yet, but at least she had taken the first step toward justice. As Lena closed the door behind the police, she sank onto the couch, exhausted but relieved. Emily came running to her, hugging her tightly. Lena held her daughter close, tears streaming down her face. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she knew they would face them together. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the quiet cemetery. The air carried a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Lena stood by the freshly dug grave, her fingers gripping the edge of her coat as if it could somehow shield her from the weight of the moment. Around her, people whispered condolences, their voices blending into a low hum that barely registered in her mind. Her 6-year-old daughter Emily clung to her side, her small hand resting trustingly in Lena's. It had only been 2 weeks since the accident that took her husband away. 2 weeks since the world as she knew it came crashing down. She still couldn't wrap her head around it. How could someone so full of life, someone who had always been there for her through thick and thin, be gone just like that? It felt unreal, like a bad dream she couldn't wake up from. But the cold reality was staring her right in the face. The casket lowered into the ground, the flowers wilting in the autumn breeze and the emptiness that now filled her home. Lena tried to focus on the words being spoken by the priest, but they seemed distant, muffled. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the day of the accident. She remembered the phone call, the shaky voice on the other end telling her something had happened. She remembered rushing to the hospital, her heart pounding in her chest, praying, with every fiber of her being, that it wasn't true. And then she remembered seeing him lying there, motionless, his face pale and peaceful, as if he were simply sleeping. Except he wasn't. He was gone. The service ended, and the crowd began to disperse slowly. Friends and family members approached Lena one by one, offering hugs and kind words. Some cried openly, others looked lost, unsure of what to say. Lena nodded and thanked them mechanically, her responses automatic. Inside, she felt numb. She appreciated their presence, but nothing they said could ease the pain gnawing at her heart. As the last few mourners drifted away, a figure stepped forward. It was her late husband's younger brother, the man who had been part of their lives for as long as she could remember. He stood there, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his expression unreadable. For a moment he just looked at her, and Lena felt a pang of unease. There was something about the way he carried himself today, something different, though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Finally, he moved closer, stopping just a few feet away. His eyes locked onto hers, and without warning, he dropped to one knee. Lena froze, her breath catching in her throat. What was happening? Before she could process anything, he reached out and took both of her hands in his. His touch was firm, almost desperate. "Lena," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I can't stand to see you go through this alone. You and Emily, you're my family now. Please, let me take care of you." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Lena's mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was he serious? Did he really think this was the right time to say something like this? She opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Instead, she just stared at him, her heart pounding wildly. "I've loved you for years," he continued, his voice growing softer, more intense. "Not just as my brother's wife, but as you. Let me be here for you. Let me help you heal." Lena pulled her hands away instinctively, taking a step back. Her cheeks burned with a mix of shock and confusion. This was too much, too soon. She needed space to breathe, to grieve, to figure out how to move forward. The last thing she expected or wanted, was a proposal at her husband's funeral. I need some time, she managed to stammer, her voice barely above a whisper. This is a lot to process. He nodded quickly, standing up. Of course, he said, his tone apologetic yet tinged with determination. Take all the time you need, but know this, I mean every word I said. I'll be here for you no matter what. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Lena standing there, her mind reeling. She glanced down at Emily, who was looking up at her with wide, curious eyes. Mommy, why did Uncle say those things? Emily asked innocently. Lena forced a weak smile, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. It's complicated, sweetheart, she replied softly. Let's just go home, okay? That night, after tucking Emily into bed, Lena found herself wandering aimlessly through the house. Everything reminded her of him, the chair where he used to sit, the books he loved to read, the faint smell of his cologne lingering in the air. It was overwhelming, suffocating even. She needed a distraction, something to keep her mind off the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. Eventually, she found herself in his study, a room that had always been his sanctuary. Boxes of his belongings sat stacked against the walls, untouched since his passing. Lena sighed, running her fingers along the edge of his desk. As she began tidying up, her hand brushed against something tucked beneath a pile of papers. It was an envelope, plain and unassuming, but her name was written on it in his unmistakable handwriting. Her heart skipped a beat. Slowly, she picked it up, her hands trembling as she turned it over. The seal was intact, untouched. A letter? From him? Why hadn't she seen it before? Taking a deep breath, Lena broke the seal and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. Her eyes scanned the first line and immediately tears welled up in her eyes. Dearest Lena, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here. She sank into the chair, clutching the letter tightly as she read on. Each word felt like a lifeline, connecting her to the man she had loved so deeply. But as she reached the middle of the page, her blood ran cold. What she read next wasn't just heartbreaking. It was alarming. Her late husband had known something important, something dangerous, and now Lena realized she was the only one who could piece together the truth. Lena sat in the chair, her hands shaking as she read the letter. The room felt smaller somehow, the silence pressing down on her like a heavy blanket. Her late husband's words were clear, written with the same care and thoughtfulness he had always shown in life. But this wasn't just a goodbye note, it was a warning. The letter began with his usual warmth, reminding her of how much he loved her and Emily. He wrote about the little things, the way she laughed when they watched old movies together, the way she sang softly while cooking dinner, the way she made their home feel like a safe haven. Reading those lines brought tears to her eyes, but they also gave her strength. It was as if he were sitting right there with her, speaking directly to her heart. But then, the tone shifted. His words grew serious, almost urgent. Lena, he wrote, if you're reading this, it means something has happened to me. I don't know exactly what, but I need you to be careful. There are things I've kept hidden from you because I didn't want to worry you. Now, though, I have no choice but to tell you the truth. Her stomach tightened. What could he possibly mean? She read on, her pulse quickening with every sentence. My brother, he continued, hasn't been honest with us. For years he's harbored feelings for you, feelings that go beyond friendship or family loyalty. At first, I thought it was harmless. People can't help who they care for, right? But recently his behavior has changed. He's crossed lines, Lena. He's lied, manipulated situations, and even tried to drive a wedge between us. I confronted him once and he swore nothing would happen. But I'm afraid of what he might do after I'm gone. Lena stopped reading. For a moment, her mind spinning. Her late husband's brother, the man who had stood by them through thick and thin, the man who had helped fix the roof last summer and played endless games of hide-and-seek with Emily. How could he be capable of such betrayal? She forced herself to keep reading, her eyes scanning the page rapidly. If anything happens to me or if he tries to insert himself into your life, I want you to trust your instincts. You're stronger than you think, Lena. Don't let anyone take advantage of your kindness. And whatever you do, don't believe everything he says." The letter ended with a final plea. "Take care of yourself and our beautiful daughter. I'll always be watching over you both." By the time Lena finished reading, her hands were trembling so badly that the paper rustled in her grip. 1,000 questions raced through her mind. Had she missed signs of trouble before? Was her husband's death truly an accident, or was there more to the story? And what about the proposal earlier today at the funeral? Was it genuine, or was it part of some larger plan? Her thoughts kept circling back to the events leading up to the accident. She remembered the phone call again, the frantic voice telling her to come to the hospital. She remembered the police report saying it was a hit and run, caused by another driver forcing her husband off the road. But now, doubt crept in. Could someone have orchestrated the crash? Was it possible that his own brother, a man she had trusted implicitly, had played a role? Lena folded the letter carefully and tucked it back into the envelope. She couldn't bring herself to leave it lying around, not after what she had just read. Instead, she slipped it into her purse, making sure it was secure. Then she sat there for a long time, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of everything. Her mind flashed back to moments when her husband's brother had acted strangely. There were small things, comments he made that seemed out of place, glances that lingered too long, conversations that veered uncomfortably close to topics they shouldn't have discussed. At the time, she had brushed them off as harmless quirks or misunderstandings. Now, though, those memories took on a darker meaning. What hurt most was the betrayal. Not just of her husband's trust, but of hers as well. She had welcomed him into their lives, treated him like family. How could he repay that with deceit? And why? Was it jealousy, anger, or something else entirely? As the night wore on, Lena found herself pacing the house, unable to sit still. Every creak of the floorboards made her jump, every shadow seemed to move on its own. She checked the locks on the doors twice, pulled the curtains shut tightly, and turned on all the lights. For the first time since her husband's passing, fear settled deep in her chest, heavier than grief. Eventually, exhaustion caught up with her, and she collapsed onto the couch, wrapping herself in a blanket. Her thoughts drifted to Emily, sleeping soundly upstairs. Her daughter deserved a happy, safe life, free from secrets and lies. Lena vowed silently to protect her at all costs, no matter what it took. Before drifting off to sleep, one thing became painfully clear. She couldn't ignore her husband's warning. If there was even a chance he was right, if his brother posed a threat, she needed to find out the truth. Not just for her own peace of mind, but for Emily's sake. The next morning, Lena woke up with a sense of purpose. She knew she couldn't confront him outright. Not yet, anyway. First, she needed answers. She decided to observe him closely, to look for patterns or inconsistencies in his behavior. Maybe, just maybe, she could uncover something that would explain the unease growing inside her. For now, though, she resolved to act normal. She wouldn't let him see her fear or suspicion. After all, if he really was hiding something, the last thing she wanted was to tip him off. So when he called later that day to check on her, she answered with a calm voice, thanking him for his concern. Inside, though, her heart was racing. As she hung up the phone, Lena glanced at the envelope tucked safely in her purse. Her husband's words echoed in her mind. Trust your instincts. She didn't know where this journey would lead, but one thing was certain. She wouldn't stop until she uncovered the truth. Lena spent the next few days walking a tightrope, balancing between suspicion and survival. She knew she had to act normal, but inside, her mind was racing with questions. Her late husband's letter weighed heavily on her heart, each word replaying in her head like a broken record. Could his brother really be involved in something so sinister? Was he capable of going as far as tampering with her husband's life? The thought made her stomach churn, but she couldn't afford to let her guard down, not even for a moment. The first step was to play along. Lena decided that if he suspected anything, He might shut her out completely, or worse, try to manipulate her further. So she accepted his offers to help around the house, pretending that she appreciated his presence. He came over regularly, bringing groceries, fixing things that needed repair, and spending time with Emily. On the surface, he seemed genuinely caring, almost too perfect. But Lena noticed small details that didn't sit right with her. For instance, he would often linger in her husband's study, rifling through drawers and shelves under the pretense of organizing or clearing things out. Once she caught him staring at a photo of her and her husband hanging on the wall, his expression unreadable. When he realized she was watching, he quickly turned away, offering a weak smile. "Just remembering old times," he said softly. But there was something hollow about his tone, something that sent shivers down her spine. Emily adored him, calling him uncle and laughing whenever he played silly games with her. It broke Lena's heart to see how easily he won her daughter's trust. How could someone who seemed so kind to a child harbor such dark intentions? Yet, Lena reminded herself not to confuse charm with innocence. People could wear masks, especially when they wanted something badly enough. One evening, while helping her tidy up the kitchen, he asked casually, "How are you holding up, Lena? Really?" She hesitated for a moment before responding, choosing her words carefully. "It's hard," she admitted, keeping her voice steady. "But having you here helps. I don't know what I'd do without your support." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You'll never have to find out," he said, his tone oddly possessive. "I'm here for you no matter what." The way he said it sent a chill through her. His words felt less like comfort and more like a claim, a warning wrapped in kindness. Lena forced herself to nod, plastering a grateful smile on her face. Inside, though, she felt trapped, like a bird locked in a gilded cage. As the days passed, Lena began to notice other strange behaviors. He would disappear into different parts of the house for long stretches, only to reappear looking flustered or distracted. One afternoon, while folding laundry in the living room, she heard raised voices coming from outside. Peering through the window, she saw him talking angrily on the phone, pacing back and forth in the driveway. Though she couldn't make out the exact word, snippets drifted toward her. "This isn't over. You promised me." Her pulse quickened. Who was he talking to? And why did he sound so defensive? Lena filed the incident away in her mind, another piece of the puzzle she was trying to solve. Then came the discovery that changed everything. While cleaning up after dinner one night, Lena reached into his coat pocket to grab a napkin he had left behind. Instead, her fingers brushed against something stiff and unfamiliar. Pulling it out, she froze. It was an insurance policy document, neatly folded and tucked away. Her eyes scanned the page, and her breath caught in her throat. The policy listed him as the sole beneficiary of her husband's life insurance payout. Not her, not Emily, him. According to the document, the cause of death was listed as accidental, just like the police report had stated. But now, doubts swirled in her mind. Why would he need access to such a large sum of money? Had he planned this all along? Lena's hands trembled as she read the fine print. The policy had been taken out months ago, long before the accident. How had her husband agreed to something like this? Or had he even known about it? Her chest tightened as anger and betrayal bubbled to the surface. This wasn't just greed. It was calculated manipulation. She slipped the document back into his coat pocket, careful not to leave any trace that she had found it. Then, she retreated to her bedroom, closing the door quietly behind her. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she clutched her temples, trying to steady her racing thoughts. What should she do? Confront him outright? Call the police? None of those options felt safe yet. She needed more evidence, something concrete that could prove his involvement beyond doubt. That night, sleep eluded her. Every creak of the floorboards made her jump. Every shadow seemed to move on its own. She checked the locks on the doors twice, pulled the curtains shut tightly, and kept a flashlight within arm's reach. For the first time since her husband's passing, fear settled deep in her chest, heavier than grief. The next morning, Lena woke up with a sense of purpose. She realized she couldn't handle this alone. If her suspicions were true, if he had truly orchestrated something as monstrous as her husband's death, she needed help. Someone trustworthy, someone who wouldn't judge her or dismiss her concerns. That's when she thought of Greg, an old friend of her husband's who worked as a private investigator. Greg had always been loyal to her husband, and Lena trusted him implicitly. After dropping Emily off at school, she called him, her voice trembling as she explained the situation. At first, Greg sounded skeptical, but when she mentioned the insurance policy and her husband's letter, his tone shifted. "Let me look into it," he said firmly. "If there's anything suspicious, I'll find it." Relieved to have someone on her side, Lena agreed to share the evidence she had gathered so far. She handed over copies of the letter, the insurance policy, and notes about his odd behavior. Greg promised to dig deeper, starting with surveillance footage from the area where the accident occurred and interviewing witnesses who might have seen something unusual. In the meantime, Lena continued to play along, acting as though nothing was wrong. She thanked him for his help, praised his cooking, and even invited him over for dinner. Inside, though, her mind was racing, piecing together clues and searching for patterns. Each interaction felt like a game of chess with both players vying for control. One evening, while washing dishes together, he leaned against the counter and said casually, "You know, Lena, we could make this work. We could be happy again. Together." Her heart skipped a beat. Happy? With him? The idea was unthinkable, yet she forced herself to laugh lightly, brushing off his comment. "One day at a time," she replied, avoiding his gaze. "Right now I'm just focused on getting through each moment." He nodded slowly, but there was a flicker of frustration in his eyes. Lena noticed it and stored it away, another clue, to add to her growing list. As the days turned into weeks, Lena's resolve hardened. She refused to let fear dictate her actions. Whatever secrets he was hiding, she was determined to uncover them. Her husband had trusted her to protect their family, and she wouldn't let him down, not now, not ever. Lena's days became a blur of emotions, fear, anger, determination, all swirling together like a storm she couldn't escape. She knew she was playing a dangerous game, pretending to trust someone who might have been involved in her husband's death. Every interaction with him felt like walking on thin ice, each step calculated and deliberate. But Lena had no choice. If she wanted answers, she had to stay patient, observant, and above all, careful. Greg, the private investigator, worked tirelessly behind the scenes. He called her every few days with updates, his voice calm but serious. At first, the news wasn't promising. Surveillance cameras near the intersection where the accident occurred hadn't captured much, just a few blurry images that didn't seem helpful. Witnesses were scarce too. Most people either didn't see anything or weren't willing to talk. Lena tried not to let disappointment get the better of her. She reminded herself that uncovering the truth took time, especially when dealing with someone as cunning as her late husband's brother. Then one evening, Greg called with a breakthrough. "I found something," he said, his tone urgent. "There's footage from a gas station about half a mile from the crash site. It shows a car matching the description of his vehicle parked near the intersection around the time of the accident." Lena's heart skipped a beat. "Are you sure?" she asked, clutching the phone tightly. "It's not definitive proof," Greg admitted, "but it's suspicious enough to dig deeper. I also spoke to a witness who mentioned seeing another car speeding away shortly after the crash. They described it as a sedan, the same make and model he drives." The information sent chills down Lena's spine. It wasn't enough to confront him outright, but it was enough to confirm her worst fears. He might have been there that night. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, and the picture they formed was horrifying. Armed with this new evidence, Lena decided it was time to push harder. She couldn't keep pretending forever, not when her daughter's safety was at stake. But she also knew she couldn't act rashly. One wrong move, and he could slip through her fingers, or, worse, turn violent. So she devised a plan to catch him off guard, to force him into revealing more than he intended. The opportunity came sooner than she expected. A few nights later, he showed up uninvited, carrying a bag of groceries and acting like the perfect guest. Lena greeted him warmly, hiding her nerves behind a practiced smile. Over dinner, she steered the conversation toward her husband's death, watching his reactions closely. "I've been thinking a lot about that night," she said casually, stirring her soup. "It's strange how things happen, isn't it? Like, why would someone just drive off like that?" He froze for a moment, his fork hovering midair. Then he forced a laugh, shaking his head. "It's tragic, really. Accidents are unpredictable." "But what if it wasn't an accident?" Lena pressed, her voice soft but probing. "What if someone meant for it to happen?" His expression darkened instantly. He set his fork down and leaned back in his chair, studying her with narrowed eyes. "Where is this coming from, Lena? Do you know something I don't?" She shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "Just wondering, that's all. Sometimes things aren't as simple as they seem." For a moment he said nothing, his jaw tightening. Then slowly a cold smile spread across his face. "You're smarter than you look," he said, his voice low and measured. "But be careful where you point those questions. Some truths can hurt more than others." The comment sent a jolt of fear through her, but Lena held her ground. "I'm just trying to understand," she replied evenly. "Isn't that what everyone wants? To find closure?" He stared at her for a long moment, his gaze piercing. Finally, he stood up, clearing his plate. "Maybe," he said cryptically. "But some doors are better left closed." Later that night, after he left, Lena replayed the conversation in her mind. His words lingered, heavy with implication. What did he mean by "some doors are better left closed"? Was he warning her or threatening her? Either way, it was clear he wasn't going to admit anything easily. Determined to gather more concrete evidence, Lena decided to take a risk. The next day, while Emily was at school and he was out running errands, she snuck into his car. Her hands trembled as she opened the glove compartment, searching for anything that might link him to the accident. At first it seemed empty, but then she noticed a small compartment beneath the dashboard. Inside was a crumpled receipt from a repair shop dated just days after the crash. Her pulse quickened as she unfolded it. The invoice listed repairs for front-end damage and a broken headlight. Exactly the kind of damage you'd expect from a hit and run. Lena snapped a photo of the receipt with her phone before carefully returning it to its hiding spot. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear herself think. This was it, the smoking gun she needed. That evening, when he came over again, Lena confronted him. She waited until they were alone in the living room, Emily safely tucked away in bed. Holding up the insurance policy and the photo of the repair receipt, she demanded answers. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice trembling but firm. "Were you there that night? Did you cause the accident?" He froze, his face pale. For a split second he looked like a cornered animal, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. Then slowly a sinister smile crept onto his lips. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Digging through my things, playing detective, but you'll never prove anything. And even if you do, who would believe you over me?" His arrogance infuriated her, but Lena refused to back down. "I already have proof," she shot back, her voice rising despite her best efforts to stay calm. "The police will piece it together. You won't get away with this." His smile faded, replaced by a look of pure hatred. "You have no idea what you're messing with," he hissed, stepping closer. "If you cross me, you'll regret it, both of you." Lena took a step back, her heart racing. She realized then that she had underestimated him, that he was capable of far worse than she had imagined. But she also knew she couldn't let fear control her. She had come too far to give up now. The next morning, Lena called Greg and told him everything. Together they decided it was time to involve the authorities. Armed with the evidence they had gathered, the letter, the insurance policy, the surveillance footage, and the repair receipt, they went to the police. Lena recounted her story, her voice steady despite the tremor of fear still lingering inside her. The officers listened intently, their expressions growing graver with each detail. When they arrived at the house to question him, Lena watched from a distance, her heart pounding. He paced angrily, muttering under his breath as the officers confronted him. At first, he denied everything. claiming he had nothing to do with the accident. But the evidence spoke louder than his lies. In the end, he was arrested and led away in handcuffs. Before leaving, he turned to Lena with a chilling glare. "This isn't over," he spat. "You'll pay for this." Though his words sent shivers down her spine, Lena stood her ground. She had done what she had to do, for her husband, for Emily, and for herself. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. The nightmare wasn't entirely over yet, but at least she had taken the first step toward justice. As Lena closed the door behind the police, she sank onto the couch, exhausted but relieved. Emily came running to her, hugging her tightly. Lena held her daughter close, tears streaming down her face. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she knew they would face them together. The weeks that followed his arrest were a whirlwind of emotions for Lena. The trial dominated the news, with headlines painting him as both a victim of circumstance and a calculating manipulator. Every day brought new revelations, details about the insurance policy, the surveillance footage, and even whispers of past grievances he had harbored against his brother. For Lena, it was surreal to see her life splashed across newspapers and TV screens, but she tried to focus on what mattered most, protecting herself and Emily. Throughout the trial, Lena testified against him, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. She recounted the letter her late husband had written, the strange behavior she had observed, and the mounting evidence that pointed to his involvement in the accident. As she spoke, she avoided looking directly at him, knowing his gaze would only unsettle her. Instead, she focused on the jury, willing them to see the truth behind her words. When the verdict finally came, it was guilty. The courtroom erupted into murmurs as the judge read out the sentence: manslaughter, with a lengthy prison term. Lena felt a mix of relief and sadness wash over her. Justice had been served, but it didn't bring her husband back. It didn't erase the pain of losing him or the fear she had lived with for so long. Still, she allowed herself a small smile as she left the courthouse, holding Emily's hand tightly. They were safe now, or at least safer than they had been before. But the journey wasn't over yet. Even after the trial, Lena struggled to shake off the lingering effects of everything she had endured. Nights were still restless, filled with dreams of shadowy figures and whispered threats. During the day, she found herself constantly checking locks and glancing over her shoulder, half expecting him to reappear somehow. It was exhausting, but Lena reminded herself that healing took time. She couldn't rush it, no matter how much. She wanted to move on. To help cope, Lena leaned on the people who cared about her. Greg, the private investigator, became a close friend, checking in regularly to make sure she was okay. Her neighbors, who had always been kind but distant, started reaching out more often, bringing meals and offering to babysit Emily when Lena needed a break. Even her late husband's parents, who had initially been skeptical of her suspicions, apologized for doubting her and promised to support her however they could. One afternoon, while sorting through boxes of her husband's belongings, Emily stumbled upon an old photo album. She carried it to Lena, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Mommy, can we look at these pictures?" she asked, climbing onto the couch beside her. Lena hesitated for a moment, unsure if she was ready to revisit those memories. But then she nodded, pulling Emily closer as they flipped through the pages together. Each photograph brought a flood of emotions: laughter, tears, love, all intertwined in the tapestry of their life before tragedy struck. There were pictures of family vacations, birthday parties, quiet moments at home. And there, tucked between two pages, was another note. From her husband. Lena froze, her fingers trembling as she unfolded the paper. His handwriting greeted her once again, familiar and comforting. "To my beautiful wife," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I don't know what happened, but I want you to remember one thing. Love conquers all. Even in the darkest times, hold on to hope. You are stronger than you think, braver than you feel, and loved more than you'll ever know. Take care of our little girl and yourself. Live fully, laugh often, and never forget how much you mean to me." Tears streamed down Lena's face as she read the words aloud to Emily. Her daughter looked up at her, confusion mingling with awe. "Daddy wrote this?" she asked softly. "Yes, sweetheart," Lena replied, her voice thick with emotion. "He loved us very much." Emily hugged her tightly, burying her face in Lena's chest. "I miss Daddy," she whispered. "I miss him too," Lena admitted, kissing the top of her daughter's head. "But we'll always have his love with us. That's something no one can take away." In the days that followed, Lena made a conscious effort to honor her husband's wishes. She started taking long walks in the park with Emily, letting the fresh air clear her mind. She rediscovered hobbies she had set aside: painting, gardening, baking cookies with Emily in the kitchen. Slowly, but surely, laughter returned to their home. It wasn't the same as before, but it was enough to keep them moving forward. Still, Lena knew she couldn't erase the scars entirely. The experience had changed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. She had faced betrayal and danger, head-on, relying on her instincts and strength to survive. In doing so, she had discovered a resilience she hadn't known she possessed. It wasn't something she was proud of. It wasn't something anyone should have to go through, but it was part of her now, woven into the fabric of who she was. One evening, as she tucked Emily into bed, her daughter looked up at her with sleepy eyes. "Mommy, will we be okay?" Lena smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's forehead. "Yes, sweetheart, we'll be okay. No matter what happens, we'll face it together." As she turned off the light and closed the door behind her, Lena paused for a moment, listening to the quiet hum of the house. It was peaceful now, free of the tension and fear that had haunted it for so long. She walked to the window, gazing out at the night sky. Stars twinkled faintly in the distance, their light a reminder that even in darkness there was beauty. Her husband's words echoed in her mind. Love conquers all. She didn't know what the future held, but she was determined to face it, with courage and grace. For Emily, for herself, and for the love that would always guide them, no matter where life took them next.